entrance to a huge cave which was created from lava flowing here 2000 years ago.
For the next hour, we walk underground through tunnels carved during volcanic eruption. Volcanoes have destructive power. Their eruptions shape the landscape. And when we started to discover this part of America, we were shocked how many of them are here. Literally, entire northwestern United States and western Canada is strongly associated with huge volcanoes. It's getting more and more claustrophobic. Here, lava flowed in these channels earlier, and when it solidified, it created a tunnel like this. But this eruption from 2000 years ago is not the only one. In 1980, the largest eruption in the last few hundred years took place, and was the similar scale to the eruption that destroyed Pompeii. So why haven't you heard about it? In this film, we'll visit the most interesting volcanoes in the western United States to learn about their explosive history and try to answer the question of how seriously threatened cities in western United States are by future volcanic eruptions. The eruption of Mount St. Helens took place in 1980. It was 1,600 times more powerful than atomic bomb drop on Hiroshima. A series of earthquakes that occurred in March 1980 were a signal that the volcano was beginning to awake after 124 years of hibernation.
Nearly 2-month period before May 18, what was essentially happening at Mount St. Helens was that magma or molten material was moving up from some deep reservoir beneath the mountain up into the volcano itself. And what basically happened is that this viscous magma moved up into the volcano and it began to grow or form what we call a dome or a cryptodome inside the volcano. And that inflating body of magma or molten material actually broke the north side of the volcano and began to cause the north side of the volcano to expand out toward the north. On the morning of May 18, what actually happened was that a magnitude 5.1 earthquake caused this weakened north flank of the volcano to break loose and to slide under the influence of gravity down into the North Fork of the Toutle River. This was a gigantic landslide. It was the first event in the series of events that occurred on May 18. The landslide basically uncorked this pressurized body of magma and allowed it to explode or expand out towards the north very rapidly. This is what we call the lateral blast.
Now we've reached this place where we can see the so-called railroad tracks. They were formed by a new flow of lava that traveled through an old, previously carved-out channel.
This is meatball, a solidified piece of lava that solidified between these walls, and it's stuck, creating a lump of rock. This is the end of a cave. It goes down there to the ground and you can't see anything further. So we go back.
Look, one layer is stuck on the top of another, even off the ceiling.
Yeah, it's on every wall.
It looks like puff pastry.
On the morning of May 18, I was driving up Interstate 5, headed up to the north side of Mount St. Helens with some parts and some batteries for our time-lapse cameras. And as I glanced over at Mount St. Helens, it was a beautiful blue sky day, and the mountain was sitting out there, and suddenly I saw this mushroom cloud go up above the volcano and climb rapidly up into the stratosphere. And I had seen a number of the small steam explosions that had been occurring for the 2 months prior to May 18, but I'd never seen anything on this magnitude, and I knew that it was a huge eruption compared to what we'd seen so far. It was a horizontally directed explosion of incredible magnitude. It caused this expanding cloud of ash, rocks, and gases to move out across the countryside to the north at speeds of several hundred miles an hour. The directed blast was really the most destructive event that occurred on the morning of May 18.
The eruption columns rises to the height of 24 kilometers, twice as high as the altitude which airplanes fly, almost 3 times higher than Mount Everest. The explosion is visible from the space, and the ash from eruption falls on 11 states and even reaches Canada.
So this avalanche came down the North Fork Toutle and just pushed all the trees in the valley out of the valley down at the head of this avalanche. So at the front end of the avalanche was this big giant pile of trees and fence posts and bushes and shrubs that had been just scraped off the valley floor and were all down at the end of the avalanche.
At the same time, snow, ice, and entire glaciers on the volcano melt, creating giant mudslides called lahars. These huge rivers of mud, debris reach all the way to Columbia River, 50 miles away. Interestingly, although the sound of the explosion was heard in distant states, almost no one in immediate vicinity heard it, all because of a phenomenon called the cone of silence. This phenomenon is related with the fact that sound was emitted mainly vertically, so it bypassed the nearest areas. The consequences were catastrophic. 57 people lost their lives, including scientists, photographers, and a legendary owner of the shelter, Harry Truman, who refused to evacuate. Hundreds of square miles were turned into barren land. Thousands of animals died. Material losses exceeded $1 billion. Eyewitnesses report the day of the explosion as follows. We stopped to get gas, and people were acting weird. It was so silent. Like no birds, animal noises, no insect noises. It was creepy. A few hours later, we were heading back towards Spokane and saw enormous black clouds coming our way. Cars coming north toward us had their headlights on. That was odd. So we turned on the radio and heard that Mount St. Helens has blown. By the time we got to Spokane, the sky was completely black. Mount St. Helens was left with a huge crater on the northern slope, tangible evidence of the power of nature. The volcano was nearly 10,000 feet high before the eruption. Now it's 1,300 feet lower. What's interesting, Mount St. Helens is not exceptionally large volcano. And to better understand what's happening under the surface in the place where there are volcanoes, we go now to California, to a place where another eruption took place a little over 100 years ago. Lassen Peak is the youngest of the large volcanoes in the Cascade Mountains. Formed about 27,000 years ago, its most famous series of eruptions took place in the years between 1914 and 1917. It was the first volcanic eruption in the history of continental part of the USA. Lassen Peak is over 10,000 feet high. Because this area is the youngest of the entire Cascade Mountains, it's ideal place for geological research and understanding what's happening beneath the surface. All the way down there's a parking lot where we started.
Almost there. at the summit. Finally.
In May 1915, lava began to collect here in this chamber under crater. Over the time, the pressure was getting bigger until it led to explosion, which caused the pieces of lava and rock to be thrown into the air. Photos of this erupting volcano went all over America, and it caused this area to become a national park soon after. And how was the first ever photo of an erupting volcano in the United States taken? In 1914, Frank Loomis set his camera towards the volcano, waiting for eruption. At about 9:45 on Sunday morning, June 14th, he saw a smoke coming from the volcano. He ran quickly from the tent to take the camera, insert photographic plate, and start exposing the photo. This is how so-called photo number 1 was created. The first photo of erupting volcano in the United States. As soon as the photo was exposed, he quickly changed the photographic plate and began exposing the second photo. At that moment, ash began to fall on the volcano, creating black clouds of smoke. In 20 minutes, Loomis took 6 photos that went around America and helped to create Lassen Volcanic National Park 2 years later. Everything around is a volcanic landscape. When you look to the horizon everywhere, yes, there is another volcano, Mount Shasta. Everything around here is volcanoes. Before the end of the day, we go to one more place. The area where we are in has magma sources under the surface, which heats the water that is also underground. This creates fumaroles and other various geothermal features to form. The presence of geysers and geothermal sites in Lassen Volcanic National Park indicates volcanic and geothermal activity in this region. The park lies in the area that is a part of volcanic system associated with so-called Ring of Fire, a zone of seismic and volcanic activity around the Pacific Ocean. The ring stretches along the western coast of both Americas, north along the entire Alaska, all the way to the other side of Pacific, to the eastern coast of Asia. Presence of all these geothermal features indicates that the Lassen Peak volcano, although it has not erupted since 1917, it is still an active volcano. What geothermal features can be found in Lassen? Fumaroles contain so-called superheated steam and gases that escape from the ground surface under high pressure. They can have temperature over 300 degrees Fahrenheit and move at the speed of 200 miles per hour. They usually have intense smell of sulfur. Hot springs and mud pools. These are pools heated by the steam below. They bubble because gases escape through them. However, when they contain clay, they create great mud due to the content of iron sulfates. However, the content of other minerals or the presence of algae means that they can also have other spectacular colors. Bubbling water. These are reservoirs of water at the first glance. Bubble like hot springs, but they are cold. So where do the bubbles came from? From CO2 that escapes, like in carbonated drinks.
There used to be a guest house where you could warm up at the hot spring.
Here in this hot water?
I don't know exactly, but apparently there were some cabins built over the steam.
Like natural sauna.
But the park took it over, buying it from the family that owned the guest house.
steam is everywhere and it's so stinky. The eruption of the Lassen volcano was for a long time the most famous in America. After 1980, the eruption of Mount St. Helens also went around the world. But even though it was huge, it was not the largest in this area. The largest explosion, 100 times stronger than the one at Mount St. Helens, took place only 200 miles from here and left something truly extraordinary. And now we are going to see what it is. Scientists call the last 11,700 years a Holocene, which from a geological point of view is the period where we as a humanity live. During this period, the largest eruption was the eruption of Mount Mazama volcano. It was so strong that it influenced the climate for entire northern hemisphere for next 3 years after eruption. However, the process was different than the one of St. Helens or Lassen. Here, a lava lake was created under the surface of the mountain, which caused the center of Mount Mazama to sink into the ground and completely disappear under the surface. As a result, a sinkhole was created with depth of 4,000 feet, but this is still not the most interesting thing. The region is located at the altitude about 6,500 feet. So outside of summer, it's covered with snow. And as a result of the volcanic eruption, a huge ball was created. And each year, the snow that appeared in winter melted in the summer, and the water gradually filled the interior, creating a crater lake. It's the deepest lake in the United States and second in the whole North America. It's one of the cleanest lakes on the entire globe, and this is all from one simple reason. No river flows into it. It is completely isolated from other bodies of water and completely fed by snow and rain. Thanks to it, it's known for unusual deep blue color. However, the smoke from surrounding forest fires has caused the entire volcano to be covered with thick smoke, and visibility is almost zero. After 2 weeks, we returned to Crater Lake to show you its extraordinary color. We are at one of the many viewpoints located around the lake. From there you can admire, among other things, the Wizard Island. You can get there by boat, but unfortunately it operates until mid-September. Instead, we climbed a Garfield Peak, from where we admire a beautiful sunset. Crater Lake, like Lassen Peak, is a national park. But you can already see how frequent and huge volcanic eruptions are in this area. So are cities located in western United States at risk of volcanic eruption? And can they suffer the fate of Pompeii? It is currently believed that the greatest threat in this area is Mount Rainier volcano. That is why we are heading 300 miles north, where less than 60 miles from the city of Seattle, there is a volcano measuring almost 15,000 feet.
Let's go! All sing your high line with the roller coaster of...
So, what makes a place that is visited by 2 million tourists each year the most dangerous volcano in the United States? There are two main reasons. First, It's the size of the mountain itself. The volcano is almost twice as high as Mount St. Helens and Crater Lake, but the altitude above sea level can be misleading. A mountain that is high above sea level, but it's surrounded by other mountains, does not tower over its surrounding like the one that is alone. So another feature to describe mountains is called peak prominence. It describes how high you have to climb from the base to the top. And Mount Rainier is really outstanding because of its prominence. Do you remember K2, the second largest mountain in the world? Mount Rainier has a prominence higher than K2. When you stand in Seattle, even though the mountain is 60 miles from the city, it looks like it is just around the corner. It's simply massive. The second reason why Mount Rainier is so dangerous is less obvious. Interesting thing is it's the snowiest place in the USA where regular measurements are taken. On average, over 50 feet of snow falls there every year. At the bottom of the mountain, during summer, all snow melts, but not on the top. So the snow and ice on the top is called glacier. And how does glacier form? It's very simple. If more snow falls in the cold season than it melts in warm season, it begins to accumulate year over year, creating a glacier. And on the top of Mount Rainier, there are over 20 different glaciers. And the fact that it's covered with glaciers, combined with its height, make it so dangerous. Scientists predict that if Mount Rainier erupts, the ash that is thrown into the air or lava will not be the biggest problem. The biggest problem will be that the temperature of the eruption will cause the old glaciers to melt. When the water created as a result of this combined with ash, rocks and soil, it will create a lahar. A lahar is similar to cement, that is thick mudslide that destroyed everything in the paths and hardened over the time as it loses water and cools. The immediate surroundings of a volcano are exposed to all threats: explosion, lava, hot rocks called lava bombs, landslide, everything you saw in the video of Mount St. Helens eruption. However, lahars flowing down the rivers are likely to reach cities surrounding Seattle, and in worst scenario, the Seattle itself. It's estimated that at least 800 people lived in lahar zone. So can we expect this volcano to erupt? The Cascade Range has 1 to 2 major eruptions every 100 years. Rainier volcano has not had any major eruptions for the last 500 years. But statistics don't lie. There will be at least one major volcanic eruption in northwestern United States over the next century. The only question is when and which volcano will erupt. But there's also another side of the coin. People, knowing the threat of volcanoes, have prepared plans to reduce the effect of the eruptions. However, animals have no such plans. After eruption of Mount St. Helens, the eruption destroyed everything around it, all flora and fauna. Scientists thought that the area around the volcano, which turned into lunar landscape, will remain like that for years. To their surprise, nature very quickly began to regenerate. And this leads us to the fact that although we perceive volcanoes as destructive force, it has a second phase. This can be seen perfectly in the area of North Cascades. This is where the least visited national park in Western State is located. A beautiful landscape of North Cascades was shaded by volcanoes and glaciers. Currently, it's the most rugged and inaccessible areas in the United States. This is where volcanoes such as Mount Baker and Glacier Peak are located. North Cascades is a part of sharp peaks, deep valleys, and turquoise lakes. Million years ago, a series of volcanic eruptions created a foundation of today's landscape. Imagine rivers of lava flowing through prehistoric terrain. The lava solidifies and hardened. Over the time, glaciers carved these rocks. They slowly moved down. They wore down the rocks. They created characteristic valleys. And the result? The landscape that takes the breath away. Sharp peaks, deep valley with crystal clear rivers, turquoise lakes formed from melting glaciers. Today, the entire area is covered with dense forest. It's home to many species of animals. This is a place where you can hike the peaks, you can admire the extraordinary impact of volcanoes on the landscape.